There was a time, not so long ago, when the map of Europe was divided by iron curtains and concrete walls, but the roads were united by a singular standard of excellence. If you close your eyes, you can probably still smell it. That specific heady mixture of unburned high-octane fuel, old leather, and horsehair padding. It was the scent of the 1970s and 80s, a time before plastic engine covers hid the mechanical hearts of our machines. A time when a car was not a consumer electronic device to be updated, but a mechanical companion built to outlive its owner. We are talking about the golden age of German automotive engineering. This was the era when made in Germany stopped being just a country of origin and became a warning to the rest of the world that second best was no longer acceptable. These weren't just cars, they were statements of intent. They were the rulers of the European roads, from the unlimited stretches of the Autobahn to the winding mountain passes of the Alps. For those of us who lived through it, these machines represented something tangible: stability in a chaotic world, precision in an era of excess, and a driving experience that required your hands, your feet, and your full attention. Today we are going to open the garage doors of history and dust off 5 distinct legends, 5 German classics that didn't just move us from point A to point B, but moved the entire automotive world forward. Let us begin with the backbone of the nation. It is impossible to discuss German dominance without bowing before the altar of the Mercedes-Benz W123. To the uninitiated, it might look like a simple sedan, perhaps painted in a shade of unassuming beige or taxi cream. But you know better. You know that this vehicle was quite possibly the most over-engineered machine ever sold to the general public. When it launched in the mid-70s, it didn't scream for attention, it simply commanded respect. There is a story that in Germany, the waiting list for a new W123 was so long, sometimes up to 3 years, that used models were selling for more than the sticker price of a new one. That is the definition of desire. But the W123 wasn't about speed. Driving a 240D or a 300D was a lesson in patience and momentum. You didn't accelerate, you gathered speed like a locomotive leaving a station, and once you were moving, you felt unstoppable. The suspension soaked up potholes with a damp, heavy compliance that modern cars still struggle to replicate. It was the sound of the door closing that really sold it, that bank vault thunk that echoed a promise of safety. This car was built before the concept of planned obsolescence infected the industry. Engineers were told to build the best car they could, and the accountants were only allowed to price it after it was finished. Whether it was serving as a taxi in Berlin with 500,000 kilometers on the clock, or ferrying a diplomat in London, the W123 was classless in the best possible way. It was dignified. It was bulletproof. It was the car that taught the world that reliability wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. Even today, seeing one chug past with that distinctive diesel clatter brings a smile to the face. It reminds us of a time when things were built to last forever. If the Mercedes was the bedrock of stability, our next legend was the architect of fear. We moved from the sedate to the terrifying. The Porsche 911 is a legend in all its forms, but in the mid-70s, Stuttgart unleashed a monster that would come to define the excess of the era. The 930 Turbo. They called it the Widowmaker, and it didn't earn that nickname by being polite. This was the car that adorned the bedroom wall of nearly every teenager in the late 70s and early 80s, usually on a poster right next to a Lamborghini Countach. But while the Lamborghini was theater, the Porsche 930 was a weapon. Visually, it was unmistakable. The hips were widened, flared out to accommodate massive rear tires, and on the back sat that T-tray spoiler, the famous whale tail. It looked like it was going 100 miles an hour while parked, but driving it? That was a different story. In the modern era, turbochargers are smooth. They provide a gentle wave of power. The 930 was not smooth. You would put your foot down and for a second, nothing would happen. You would wait, wondering if the engine had gone to sleep. And then, suddenly, the boost would hit. It hit like a sledgehammer. The back of the car would squat, the nose would lift, and you would be rocketed toward the horizon with a violence that could tear the steering wheel from your grip. It was a car that demanded respect, and if you didn't give it respect, especially in the wet, it would punish you. Lift off the throttle in a corner and that heavy rear engine would act like a pendulum, swinging the car around before you could blink. That danger was part of the allure. It was a sophisticated car for a raw, unsophisticated driver. It represented the pinnacle of air-cooled engineering. The noise of that flat 6 fan whirring behind your ears, the smell of hot oil, the cramped, upright cabin. It was a car that told the world you were successful. Yes, but also that you were brave. It was the ultimate analog supercar, a machine that required you to be a pilot, not just a passenger. While Porsche was scaring drivers on the Autobahn, down in Munich, a revolution was brewing that would change the driveway of every upwardly mobile professional. We are talking about the birth of the modern sports sedan, the BMW 3 Series, specifically the E30 generation. If the 70s were about survival, the 80s were about aspiration, and nothing screamed, "I am on my way up," like an E30. It arrived in the early 80s and instantly made everything else look old. The design was perfection in its simplicity. The quad headlights, the kidney grille, the boxy yet aerodynamic shape, and that distinct kink in the rear window pillar. It was handsome, but not flashy. It fit as perfectly outside a Wall Street office as it did in the paddock of a racetrack. But the real magic happened when you sat in the driver's seat. The dashboard was angled toward you, a subtle psychological design choice that whispered, "This car is for you, the driver. The passenger is just along for the ride." The E30 was the car that cemented the slogan, "The ultimate driving machine." It wasn't just marketing, the balance was exquisite. You could feel exactly what the front wheels were doing through the thin, leather-wrapped steering wheel. Whether it was the rev-happy four-cylinder in the 318 or the silky smooth straight six in the 325, the car urged you to drive it harder. It was the darling of the yuppie generation, yes, but it was also a touring car champion. It gave birth to the M3, a homologation special with blistered arches that dominated racetracks around the world. But even the standard models had that magic. It was the democratization of performance. You didn't need to be a millionaire to experience German precision. You just needed an E30. It was the car that taught a generation that a family sedan didn't have to be boring. It could be a precision instrument. As the 80s progressed, a new challenger emerged from Ingolstadt, a brand that had been quietly making sensible cars until they decided to rewrite the laws of physics. We cannot discuss this era without the car that killed the two-wheel drive performance car, the Audi Quattro. Before this car, four-wheel drive was for farm trucks, military jeeps, and tractors. It was heavy, clunky, and slow. Audi looked at that and said, no. When the Quattro burst onto the rally stages in the early 80s, it didn't just win, it embarrassed the competition. Imagine the scene. A snowy forest in Sweden, icy roads, visibility near zero. The rear-wheel drive competitors are sliding, fighting for traction, tiptoeing around corners. Then you hear it, that unique offbeat warble of the 5-cylinder turbo engine. The Quattro appears, and it isn't sliding helplessly. It is clawing into the ice, accelerating out of corners as if it were on dry asphalt. It changed motorsport overnight. But the road car, the Quattro, brought that revolution to the street. It was boxy with those blistered fender flares that looked like they were punched out by a heavy press. It had a digital dashboard that glowed with orange futuristic graphics, looking like something out of a sci-fi movie. Driving it felt like cheating. You had grip where others had slip. It was a technological marvel that signaled the beginning of the high-tech era. It wasn't just about mechanical grip. It was about engineering a solution to nature itself. The Quattro made the driver feel invincible, capable of conquering rain, snow, and gravel. It elevated Audi from a sensible manufacturer to a premium technological leader. Every time you see an all-wheel drive badge on a modern performance car today, you are looking at the legacy of the Quattro. It was the disruptor of its decade. Finally, we must slow down. We must exit the racetrack, leave the rally stage, and cruise down the boulevard. If the W123 was for work and the Porsche was for thrills, our final classic was for the reward, the Mercedes-Benz R107 SL. You know this car. You saw it parked in front of the oil tycoon's mansion in Dallas. You saw it driven by the detective in Heart to Heart. It was the ultimate symbol of success in the 70s and 80s. The R107 was not a sports car in the traditional sense. It was a Panzer in a tuxedo. It was heavy, solid, and built with a level of quality that bordered on the obsessive. It was available with a range of engines, but the V8s were the ones to have. They didn't scream. They hummed with a deep, authoritative reserve of power. This was a car designed for the Autobahn at 120 miles per hour, driven with one hand on the wheel and the other adjusting the radio. It had a unique dual personality. In the winter, with the heavy, color-matched hardtop attached, it was a cozy, silent coupe that shut out the world. In the summer, you could hoist that top off, lower the soft roof, and let the sun in. It was the car you bought when you had nothing left to prove. It said to the world, I have arrived, and I am in no rush. The interior was a mix of firm German leather, wood veneer, and large, legible dials. There were no gimmicks, just pure, unadulterated quality. It stayed in production for 18 years, a lifespan unheard of in modern times, simply because Mercedes couldn't improve upon it and the public wouldn't stop buying it. It was the Grand Tourer defined. Driving one today still feels like an event. You sit high, looking down that long, sculpted hood towards the three-pointed star, and you understand why it was the choice of royalty, stars, and captains of industry. These 5 machines, the W123, the 930 Turbo, the E30, the Quattro, and the SL, were more than just metal, glass, and rubber. They were the high-water mark of the mechanical age. They were built by engineers who were given the freedom to pursue perfection, driven by a philosophy that valued substance over style. They ruled the European roads not just because they were fast or reliable or luxurious, but because they had soul. They communicated with us. They told us about the road surface through the steering. They told us about the engine load through the throttle. And they told us about the world around us without the filter of computers. Looking back at them now from our world of touchscreens and autonomous driving aids, they seem almost heroic. They remind us of a time when driving was a skill and ownership was a relationship. We may not be able to go back to the 70s and 80s, but as long as these German classics are kept on the road, fired up on Sunday mornings, and cherished by those who understand their value, that golden era will never truly die. They are the rulers of the road. Long may they reign.